So, first things first, guys. How are you?
Good.
Thank you.
Happy to be in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Well, good to hear everything's going well. So, before we talk about the music you've been making lately, I'd like to go back to the beginning quickly. So, do you remember your first impression of Maya?
Yes, do you?
Man. Well, Maya and I were like really close friends during high school, so I can't recall my very first impression of her, but through high school we were really close. So
Okay.
I guess that I always thought that she was quite an exceptional human being, I suppose.
It's very kind.
Was part of the connection, was that music straight from the get-go?
Not at all. We didn't start making music until, I know, long after that. And to be honest, once we did start making music, it was, I don't know, I guess I kind of had to convince you.
It took a while.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Maya, why did he have to convince you?
I'd never done anything like it before. I'd been on stage a lot, I did dancing and acting, but I'd never done music before. So it took it did take a bit of convincing.
And at that time then, what role did music play for you? Was it an important thing in your life?
Totally, yeah. My dad's a musician, and so music, and I always loved music, like I was a huge music fan, but I just never considered doing music as a career or...
Yeah, and it's not like you hadn't sung, it's just that you hadn't, hadn't thought about...
I just hadn't even considered it.
She hadn't considered being poor all her life. But now, whew.
Yeah.
So then I assume you had, and that was kind of already your route.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like, I was actually thinking about it this morning. It's about the only thing that I've ever had any, I don't know, confidence in.
Okay.
Like I've never felt very, I don't know, very good at much else in my life. It's like music's something that I feel safe in. And it's mine. It's not something I have to make for, to please anyone else.
Right.
Like that's not the purpose of it for me, which is really nice. And I couldn't care less what someone else is doing with it. Like it's a personal thing, which is great. Like firstly, that's really important.
In that sense, do you remember what it felt like writing the first song?
I've heard about this first song.
It's so bad. I don't necessarily remember what it was like writing my first song, but I do remember, I think where it all changed. I was around 14 and I listened to a lot of like heavier, darker music like through my teenage years, and I still do, but I remember deciding and realizing in my head, like, if I want to play music, I need to learn how to play the guitar. Or I need to like learn an instrument. And so at 14 years old, I picked up a guitar and I taught myself how to play within, I don't know, a few weeks or something. And all of a sudden I was on stage and I couldn't play anything, like I was absolutely shit. But all of a sudden it felt like everything was unleashed and I was in control and I could do things that I had always watched my older brother do, and I always wanted to do the same thing, I guess. Writing music is a buzz, and it's something that I love to see people commit themselves to, because it's like, it's not easy a lot of the time. It's fucking hard. Right. It's painful. Like I strongly recommend steering clear of being a songwriter unless it is truly what you love. Like it's not an enjoyable process half the time. Right. And there are these moments where it's like having something that just buzzes you and turns you on, and you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. But otherwise it's painful because there are days where you can't write and you're like, why can't I do that? Or there are days where you write absolute shit and you're like, why am I writing shit today? And you don't have a control over it. Yeah, it's a funny thing.
So that's very interesting then, because what keeps you going? What makes you come back to songwriting?
I have no idea.
Is it
I personally, you know, this is only me, and every songwriter you talk to, it'll be so different. But for me, it is what helps me deal with everything, the bullshit, the stress, the relationships, the failure, the success, and also like just fear. Like it's something that helps me cope. And there is so much bullshit in the world, and there's so much stuff that's making people feel worthless or feel, I don't know, just looking for purpose. And I find purpose in songwriting, because if you listen to our records, the songs they're not just some made up story about nothing. Like that's my bullshit. That's my bag of skeletons, you know. And you may not see exactly what I see when I sing them, but that's my pain. And I hope that people can attach themselves to that, you know. Like I hope people find something in it. Like that's the only reason I share it. Like it's not like to get fucking famous. Like screw that. That's the last thing that means anything to either of us, I think. Right.
But what I find fascinating, and because the way you describe it, it seems like an arduous process for you. So when did you decide to share that with Maia? And then kind of that vulnerable side of you?
Maia, I guess Maia's like the closest person to me in the world. So it's like she knows what a song is about without me having to tell her. You know, like when I write, you get it, right?
Yeah, maybe sometimes before you even get it. There have been times where I'm like, oh yeah, I've got it. And he's like, oh, do you?
Because I don't.
And then I tell him what I think, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly it.
And maybe that's why this process works really well, is that there are songs on this new record that I don't sing, but that are really, really important to me. And things that I'm really fragile about that Maia portrays better than I could, you know, and that's pretty cool. Like, it's really nice to be able to do that.
And what you mentioned about, well, not being in it to be famous, because you had a record deal a couple of years ago, but then you decided that wasn't the way to go for you. So was that and I think I can guess the answer now, but was that a tough decision? Because that's something people dream of, to kind of get that.
At the time it was tough.
Yeah, right? It took a long time to kind of decide to part ways, and but once we'd made the decision, it was just instantly like we didn't regret it at all. It was just like, no, it's just not right for us.
And looking back 2 years on, it was the best decision we could have made at that time. Like we made the right decision, and it's thanks to a certain few people that were around us, supporting us, saying, you can do this by yourself, you can do this alone. And the thing about our process now is, like, anyone that we work with, like, we're not going to get fucked around, like, because
we know how it works now.
but also being good people is more important than success, or like having a good value of life is more important than success, or waking up in the morning and feeling good about yourself is more important than success. So the moment that any of those things are sacrificed, it's not worth it.
But in that sense, did you get burned in a way?
Yeah.
In what sense? Financially,
everything.
just creatively?
Everything. We didn't have a thing. Like as we left the label, they owned our first record. We hadn't made a cent.
I think more than anything, for me personally, it was kind of like they took a part of my innocence towards the industry away. Like,
the romance of it.
I just, you know, like we were offered a record deal, we were so excited, and then it all turned to crap, and it was just like, a record deal isn't everything that people dream about.
And it's not, you know, like we've over the last 2 years, we've been traveling and meeting musicians, and we meet so many musicians that are in situations, and ourselves included, you know, we still fall into situations where it's not ideal or whatever. But we just meet so many people that there's not like a community of musicians where everyone's helping everyone, or where they feel as though they can share their opinions.
Right.
Like a lot of people will just stay quiet instead of being like, hey, yo, you're about to do something that's a really bad idea. And looking back, there were a few people that warned us. But there were plenty of people that could have said a lot more as well. And I hope that we can do that for people, you know, going forward, because the music industry is solidly changing constantly, and there are so many ways to survive as an independent musician. And if you don't want to be like fucking Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran, like, you can make a living from music, providing you're willing to work, like actually work, not just put out some music and
hope
pat yourself on the back.
Top.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is, well, you mentioned the work ethic, and this is kind of what you've been doing, I suppose, for the past couple of years, which is just to play as much as you could.
Yeah.
So and then, like you say, maybe people underestimate how much work goes into it, but can you explain kind of what it takes to do those kind of things, to travel the world and to play shows? And
for us, it just took sacrifice. Like, we sacrificed everything, you know, like we sacrificed having a normal life, we sacrificed having a home, we sacrificed ever seeing our families. We've seen our families twice in 2 years, and that's just how it is. Living on the road isn't easy. Maya knows that best.
Yeah, I mean, like it's all hard work, and we're constantly fighting for this thing that we're trying. I don't even know what we're trying to do, but we're constantly working towards having people listen to our music, and but it's an adventure as well. Like every time I get overwhelmed by the amount of work, or just how tired I am, or emotional, or whatever, you just kind of have to remind yourself that you're having this amazing adventure that a lot of people don't get to have in their lives, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's funny, like you've caught us on the day-to-day. Like today, to be honest, I do not care about anything. Like I'm so fucking exhausted, I do not give a shit. Like, I don't know, it's just like you have good days and bad days, and that's okay, but you have to be okay with it, you know, the higher highs and lower lows. So the good days are amazing, and the bad days you're just like, nah, not interested.
But kind of that cathartic element that you mentioned in songwriting, is that then the payoff that you get to have that hour on stage and
yeah.
And see, that's the thing, is like, I've heard lots of people talk about it. It's like some people say like being a musician is 25 years of waiting and a day of like rock and roll, you know, or whatever, like, and it's like that same thing. When we're on stage, there's nothing wrong. Right. It's just that when you cut it down, being on stage isn't your life. And also, you can't live your life for half an hour a day or for an hour a day. Right. You know, that doesn't define you as a person. And music definitely doesn't define us as people. Like, it's a part of us, but it is not who we are. And that's really important for like young musicians to realize. Like, the sooner they realize it, the better, that music does not define who you are as a person. It's just a part of your life. And great that it is, because it's beautiful, but it's not everything.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess we're lucky that we've had to work so hard to realize that. Like, a lot of people just come into success and music is their life and they are music, and it's just like, yeah, I feel quite fortunate that we've had to work that hard to realize that that's not the way that life is,
but we should also mention that the fact that we've survived these 2 years working as hard as we have, like, we've played like 400 shows, right, and we've been to 16 different countries, and we have been constantly on the road. We could not have survived that without like a list of probably 200 generous human beings.
Right.
You know, like, these people that have supported us, they bend over backwards to make us feel comfortable. You know, like, people give you their bed Like, you know, like if you're staying at their house and you've never met them before, they're like, yeah, you take my room. And you're like, what the? No, I'll sleep on the ground.
Right,
this looks like
Yeah.
a really nice plank of wood right here. But that's something that we have to be very aware of. Like, we couldn't have existed without that support and that help.
And that's really special about playing music. Like, a lot of people come and travel and they meet people, but through playing music we've met all these amazing, generous people, and it's just a really nice way to, like, it's a nice community that we've found.
And we've learned how to say really dirty things in other languages, which is really important.
You have.
That's true.
So you can find your way in any country now.
I can get beat up in any country.